come from the Greek pedos, which means of the boy or the child, and ago means that the lead. That means you are doing something to lead a child. And so this is what is the meaning of that. And in a broader perspective, what we really mean, the implication of this particular topic is that the art or the function of a teaching, the activity of teaching, how one should think of teaching, the art of science of teaching, the educational instructional methods, all are implicated in this particular, in a broader sense of the term. But basically, it originated from the idea that there has to be some kind of mechanism by virtue of which one can lead a learner or a very small boy or I mean, basically, this is a scenario. And then, so far as the knowledge pool is concerned, whenever we are also a child to the entire knowledge base. So, therefore, anyone who leads me in that kind of how to gather the knowledge, in that case, our term is very much applicable. So, that's the reason why we have been uh, using this term for understanding the art or the function of teaching. So, once we have defined this thing, that means essentially it has now landed into the principles and methods of instruction. That means what is the essential function of a teacher and what are the components of the teaching philosophy. So these are the things which are included in this particular topic. The art or the science of being a teacher, that is most important part, that it is a realization per se that whenever you happen to be a teacher, you must have the understanding of the science of becoming a teacher. That means what is that which is implicated, what is the broader sense of a teacher, and what is the sense, actual sense of teaching. So, so this is initially, it was a misnomer. I mean, ultimately turned to a misnomer right at this scenario. It's not important that a teacher, how much teaching he does or what is the art of teaching he or she practices. It's not important. Important part is that whatever you do, that the student has to learn. So naturally, the entire scenario has nowadays changed in the entire gamut of pedagogy. That the thing is that what exactly is the learning outcome of the students, that will determine what is your teaching. So that's the thing. But however, we are continuing to tell it. I mean, describe it like the activities of educating or instructing. But again, I personally feel also, I have learned it also over the ages that the teacher is not a good teacher who teaches. A teacher is a little bit fairer whenever a teacher goes to guide. And as a teacher, he will be an excellent teacher if he can, or if he is able, if he succeeds in inspiring, and if he can be a student of his students. So then only the good teaching will ultimately be accomplished. So that's what I have learned through my days of serving as a teacher of the community of different institutes. So therefore, what is there that you have to be a part of the preparatory training or instructions of a brand of new generation guys who are trying to grasp certain subjects or in the science and engineering. So we are basically concerned in that right at this moment, but it is a generic term. Now, whenever we talk about the advanced pedagogy, then it is essentially a skillful planning. Naturally, the skillful planning, that there is an objective of teaching learning process. So I say that the objective is also fixed by these days. The objective is that what is the quantum of learning the students have actually had. Now the thing is that that will also raise a very important question, which I will be coming at a later time. That that means the it will ultimately talk about the implementation of the planned activities of a teacher. So this is the entire thing. That means what is the kind of innovation a teacher ensues in the kind of his deliberation or in the kind of his treating with the classroom students. So therefore, this is very important. that whether it is he or she is using ICT tools for teaching tools, etc. So these are very general terms, but the issue is something different. So that I'll be coming at a later time once we know something more. So different modes of learning, you have to understand that the people, the different persons, they have got different learning traits. So unless you understand that the different learning traits of different people, it's very difficult for you to make a person learn something. Most important point is that everyone learns by oneself. Nobody can teach anyone. But what does then the teacher do? What does this particular term do? The pedagogy. But basically, that tries to invoke some kind of conceptual tools by virtue of which it can accelerate the learning process, it can entice the student for learning, it can motivate the students for learning, uh, so that the new generation knowledgeable persons can be prepared for a country, for the entire globe. So this is essentially the meaning of that. So therefore, the advanced pedagogy will implicate the innovative and instructional strategies. These are the components, and the enriched curriculum. Enriched curriculum is very important because what we used to know when we happen to be the students of undergraduate engineering and what the present day students know, there is a heaven and hell difference. The present day students, they are not only biologically evolutionary, they have got the higher intelligence level, they are equipped with much better knowledge, and in the particular area, age of information, so they are equipped with lots of information with that kind of intelligence, so they have got a very advanced knowledge about many things. So therefore, unless you can surmount these things and you can feed something more, then you are not basically enticing a good learning habit. So therefore, this is important. So therefore, we have to find out the effective teaching learning process. We have to also decide whether the teaching learning process is a one-way traffic or it's a two-way. So this is also important. So we say that it is like this, that the strengthening of students' motivation, that's what I have told you, that whatever is there, that the student has to be motivated, and then that can be done. What we have seen, that the people have already discovered, that active learning is one particular thing, and the generic learning is it has to be made a generic issue. That means that don't try to focus on particular way of doing it. Try to believe in the capacity of a learner, and then automatically you devise means such that the learner can learn by himself or herself. Another important thing which a teacher, or say the teacher, a branded teacher, he or she has to face is that, in the basic, that is another purpose of pedagogy, that the changing huge dynamism has to be incorporated into the system. So that's why, unless the dynamism is there, if you don't infuse the dynamism in the practice of teaching or in the pedagogical practices, then the mission is failed. So, and another important point which I'll be coming here, I'll address that thing, that the scientifically one has to analyze the process of deliberation of a teacher. What exactly the teacher should do? That there has to be a good analysis based on the sciences of the present day social science as well as the other sciences also. Uh, and then the new exploration of new teaching methods. That is another important thing, that you have to decide right on the basis of your experience what kind of method has to be implemented at what particular point of time. So that the self-directed learning has to be promoted. So then only the output-based education, which the people are harping, specifically uh, in this present era, when the accreditation has become universal, so that the degrees or the diplomas, they can be interchangeable. So to make that kind of thing, it is very important that the outcome-based education has to be invoked by all countries, and then that's the standard practices are there, which is, I mean, the structure is already given by the, uh, I mean, the Washington, through the Washington Accord. So therefore, that is there. So already that is there. So the teachers must be knowing that thing, and the students have to know also this thing. So now let us see that whenever we are talking about the pedagogy, then ultimately whenever we have fixed the objective of the making the students learn, then naturally we have to see that what is exactly a learning. The learning is essentially a neural function, and that is as a consequence of experience. So, who is instrumental? What is instrumental in learning? That is the human brain. Human brain is instrumental in learning. So, the learning functionary is coming from the brain, and then the brain, you know that it is a complex system of distinct elements, and then it tries to recognize a pattern as it perceives, and then the pattern can be altered by experiences, and the knowledge is created by the activation of the brain. So this is the thing, and that is precisely what is being practiced in today's scenario. Now see that there are two brains. One is the left brain that is normally analytic, that ultimately takes into the functionaries like the verbal, sequential, speaks with few gestures, respond to logic, plans ahead, and process information linearly. So this is the kind of activity the left brain does. That means that the sequential and linear operations, these are the things. So therefore, these guys, the left brain enables one to be strong in mathematics, in logical analysis, as well as in language. What does the right brain do? Right brain is normally visual, it's impulsive, it gestures when speaking, process information in varied order, and it doesn't really, it's not sequential, the less punctual, because of the fact that they are normally the very brilliant, the right brains, if that is very strong over that thing. So that is manifested by the nature of that particular person also. Response to emotion. So, responsible for holistic and global learning. It's very difficult to understand that who is the holistic or the global learner for a teacher. So, this is very difficult, and quite often a teacher gets mistaken. So, we have written this thing, the left brain, logical, sequential, rational, analytical, objective, and looks at parts. Whereas right brain is a random, intuitive, holistic, synthesizing, subjective, and looks at wholes. Since no two brains are similar, that means two different persons must bear differences in the external stimuli to process the information. So this means that there is always difference in the learning practices between any two persons. That's what it ultimately counts. That's the science. So hence, the learning styles will be different, and it's the law of nature. So, as a teacher, you have to understand the learning styles of an individual student. And once you can understand that thing, then if you try to extrapolate this idea to the teaching learning process, then both teachers and students must understand the basic reality of mismatch in the styles of learning, the styles of teaching, and in the mismatch between the teaching style of a teacher and the learning style of a student. So that mismatch has to be lessened. So that is essentially the advanced pedagogy. So a lot of studies have been there. So it has almost established that the quantum of learning is 10% of what one reads, 20% of what one hears, 30% of what one sees, 50% of what one sees and hears, 70% of what one says, 90% of what one says and do. Interestingly, for each of the 100 students, 20 students are normally auditory learners. So they learn by auditory method, by listening, and 40% are visual learners. But 90% of all teachers are auditory. So they are habituated in believing that okay, go on lecturing. So means a large fraction of students are pushed out of the inherent learning track. So this is most important thing. Now, another important point is that this is a famous proverb that I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. So this is most important. And the student's desire is also very important, and it has to be responsive to a teaching. Now let us see what happens. In a classroom, there will be a group of students. So they will have the different traits, different learning states, different strength of learning, that is a genetic issue, and then the manner the students read oneself, that is a social science issue. So therefore, the society, how that society has grouped that boy, and accordingly, what is the perception which has been made ingrained by the society in that particular boy or girl, that is another important thing. So that's a science, and it's also the strength of learning, that's a genetic issue, and the learning traits, that is another thing. So when as a teacher, it is important that you have to foster learning. So therefore, you have to recognize the diversity of learning states and styles in the group of students he or she is handling. So therefore, this is important. So education means that students, the education, uh, imparting education to students must be tailored in accordance with the individual's strength and attitude. This is very difficult. Then you may ask that if 40 students, 50 students, 100 students are there, then will there be 100 types? No. There has to be some kind of standardization. Standardization is a key issue of everywhere, in every science and engineering practices. So therefore, that kind of customization is not possible. If it is possible, of course, today, in today's scenario, in somewhere we in the smart manufacturing sector, we are trying to customize the things. But the customization, individual customization, is a very difficult thing, more or less. But statistically, what will happen? That if you have 100 students in a classroom, then there will be some groups, or which can be grouped in some common or nearly common learning styles. So therefore, this is another important thing. So naturally, this can be addressed that way. Now let's see that how do I learn? That whenever some external world is sending some signals, it can be sensory, the sound or sight, or intuitive, hunches or insight. So sensory channels, whatever information it gets, they can be visual or auditory. And then the perceived information is organized by inductive or deductive modes. What is inductive mode? Inductive mode is information is organized by observing facts and then inferring the underlying principles. What is the deductive? That the consequences are deduced from a given principle. So so this is important. Now Newton's gravitation. No, discovery of Newton's laws of gravitation. So there it was the observation of facts and then infer Sir Isaac Newton inferred the underlying principles of the laws of gravitation. So that was an inductive thing. And deductive is a little bit simpler, that the principles are given and then we find out the consequences. Organized information is then processed either actively through engagement in physical activities or reflectively through introspection. And finally, progress towards the understanding takes place sequentially in steps or globally in large jumps. That is how the learning is accomplished. So, what we are needed right at this moment is that as I already told you, that it's not important that what is being taught by anyone. It's important that what is learned by a student. And then let us see the scenario that inductive mode is a natural learning style of most of the students, whereas most of the teachers prefer deductive style of teaching. So characteristic teaching styles are inclusive, verbal, deductive, reflective, and sequential. So this is how the mismatch takes place. So the lack of comprehensive scope for the sensory, visual, inductive, active, and global modes of learning is noticeable. So I have already told you. You see that whenever a teaching is conceived, that there are three ways of thinking about the teaching practice. One is the teaching models, the other one is the teaching skills, the third one is the teaching relationship. And reflection is, of course, one very important thing that one has to be reflective. So the different teaching phases, as per Philip Jackson model, is that the pre-active, that means you have to plan and design the lesson. Interactive, that means implementation and execution of the plan, and post-active, that means the evaluation. So the evaluation can also be deduced from the Bloom's taxonomy. So if you know about these things, but I'm not going to discuss all these things because the time will not permit. So the Phillips Jackson model also say that the determining the goals and set the objective first, the teaching objective, then the content to be taught, then the sequencing or organization of the content, then the selection of the methods for teaching, whether it will be an active mode of uh, learning you will promote, or it will be passive mode of learning you will promote. That is the thing which you have to decide. Select the tools and techniques of evaluation. So I have already told a little bit about this. Now let us see. This is the thing that preferred learning styles of the student or for anyone, that the sensory and ये pointer चाहिए, pointer. Sorry. Now you see that the sensory and intuitive. This is the first step of learning is the sensory or intuitive. Either through sensing you have a perception, or through intuition you create the perception. Then visual or audited. Then this information can be the input information, that either it can be visual, that's by seeing, or by hearing. Then inductive or deductive, the organization of the information. Then after the information is organized, then the processing of information, either it is active by doing, or reflective by introspection, by hunching. Then the understanding can be sequential, or it can be global. Whereas the corresponding teaching style, what should be the teaching style? The concrete and abstract. That will be the content. The visual and verbal. That is the presentation mode. Inductive and deductive organization. Active or active participation of the students, or the passive learners. Participation in the passive mode. Sequential or global. The perspective. That is the kind of thing. Now, from here, what I tried to show was that there is a mismatch. We have to accept that this mismatch is there. So the balance has to be secured. So what we have to introspect is that the most significant aspects of learning styles is needed, and then what learning styles do most students have. That is another important thing. So how do we achieve the balance? You see that we have a little of balance. That is the existing thing. But balance means that the visual as well as verbal, judicious admixture, active and reflective, both component you have to introduce in your teaching. And the global and sequential, it has to be global and sequential you have to address. So these are the things. So therefore, this is a very tricky job. Naturally, the first thing is that you have to motivate and try to balance the information. That means the facts, data, these are the things which are relevant to the sensing. So what you have to do is that now I will tell you one particular thing, that whenever you will be teaching, then you have to take recourse to the different ICT tools and the visual thing, because the students these days, they have become the uh, savvy in seeing the picture or in television or in computer. So naturally, where the subjects are moving, so naturally a teacher must not stand still. A teacher should also move so as to uh, be matching to the students' attitude. These days, students' attitude, and then uh, the theoretical material can be presented by providing the real life example. So whenever some theoretical material is issued, then there has to be given some example. And then the theory can be, how the theory can be validated, how can it be deduced, how the consequences can be deduced from that. It is to be also expressed. It is to be explained. Another important point which I have seen, that every time you have to go for the active learning. How can you do that? You can give a pause. In fact, no one is capable of concentrating towards hearing a lecture for more than 25 minutes or so. So, therefore, if you can give pause for the students for the active work or the small group of brainstorming activities within the classroom, if you can give, then you can really have a judicious admixture of active learning and passive learning. So this is another important thing. So, and another, most importantly, the students should be allowed to work cooperatively, and also they have to be made to to exploit their brains. So that can be done only if you give the homework assignment without any restriction, so they can get the information from anywhere you like, from anywhere they like. So therefore, this is another important thing, so that if the students are really made inclined towards using their minds and brains, then they will automatically learn. Because the first point which I told, that uh, everywhere, everyone will ultimately learn by oneself. So naturally, that avenue has to be created. So the traditional methods of teaching has now been getting changed. So we have to introspect a few non-traditional teaching learning strategies. So this is very important. One is a project-based learning. So the students have to be given uh, to use their minds and original thinking. So greater participation of students in learning is wanted. So that can be done if you give the projects to a group of students, and also if the soft skills are given to be developed by the students. Whenever you are giving a project where the students are required to acquire the soft skills, they will do that by default. So naturally, that has to be encouraged. So projects should be interdisciplinary in nature, because if anyone is a mechanical engineer, then the mechanical engineering cannot be, in today's scenario, cannot be uh, complete unless that particular engineering activity is mixed with materials activity, is mixed with electronics activity, is mixed with the computational activities. It's not possible because of the entire advancement of the subjects. So it's very difficult. So naturally, the entire smart manufacturing as such tells you. So you can see that in the smart manufacturing, if you really want to be a smart manufacturing industry ready person, then naturally you have to acquire such kind of skills. The multiple skills you have to have, and you cannot say that only the heat transfer, only the mechanical, the machine designs I'll be doing. It's not possible. So therefore, this is another important thing. So who will do that? The teaching strategy, the entire course curriculum, the entire teaching strategy, the one teacher giving a projects which will ultimately require the students to make use of all these particular capacities, all these skills. Then only they will try to learn those things of their own, and they will ultimately do the job. Now, inductive mode of teaching learning is another important thing. that teacher can throw a challenge to a, to a challenging problem to the students for them to solve it. So they will solve. They will solve, but this is a good challenge to the teacher. As a natural teaching style is deductive. So it should be made inductive. It should be made inductive. So that's why, so you depend or you use most of the time the student's mind. So therefore, that is one important aspect of pedagogy, and the students should also understand this. Inquiry-based learning, that is also important. That uh, some problem can be given where the answers are to be found out. So for that, the students need to speculate the outcome and not necessarily that it has to be correct. Most importantly, the mind usage of mind is important here. And then web-based learning, that is not to be discussed because the students and the teachers, they have now become very much familiar with the web-based learning. So this is not important that that will be there. So it is always there. So that's why the teaching activity has become so difficult. Web-based learning is now made the students so much equipped with the knowledge. So it's very difficult. The classical teaching learning practice, to make it alive, is a difficult, it's a very challenging issue for all universities, for all higher education institutes. So therefore, we have to look at it in a different manner. So cooperative learning, if we can bang upon the cooperative learning, that the team members will rely with on one another. So therefore, to achieve the final goals. So that is how is it possible that if I ask that you basically prepare a such and such component which can have such and such multifunctionalities. So for that, it has to be the jobs, the components are to be divided, and if require the cross disciplinary members are to be inducted, and accordingly the whole the entire students of the students of the group that will be accountable to a task. So everyone will have that kind of collaborative skills to be used, and naturally this is a very good way of learning. Now, how does the principles of good teaching emanate? The mindset of students in learning process is continuously changing. With huge information, I have already told you that huge information is nowadays available. So therefore, mindset is changing. So creating ambience for the live contact between the teacher and student is important. Very important that there should not be any bar. So the teacher must take interest in the students, and the students should also be very keen to be with the teachers. As I said, that this cannot be one way. So that is the reason why we discuss these things in different uh, conferences, different courses, FDPs and other things. And to foster the advanced learning of students, it is imperative that entirely new set of principles are followed by the teachers. So what we propose? We propose that we have to encourage the student-teachers contact. We have to enhance the cooperation amongst the learners. We have to pay due attention to the active learning. We have to go for a prompt feedback practice. So assessment of students, time management, communicating high expectations about the performance, to respect diversity in talents and the learning styles, communication with the students. So a teacher should be a co-learner as a mentor. Now we can really see a little bit about how, I mean, these are suggestive steps for effective lecture. That the limit of attention, the that has to be understood, and accordingly, the lecturing has to be curtailed to that particular. And the outline of the meaningful context of a lecture should be made known to the students in advance so that they can be mentally prepared. Since I have already told you that the students of this generation they get good entertainment to the act they perform. So the TV habit has already prompted the brain system. So therefore, the useful and interesting activity of the students in the middle portion of the class, you have to do that, and it can be by quiz, by throwing some quiz or asking students to prepare study question. The students can, if you ask the students to set questions, then I can tell you that this is a good habit. Good teaching habit, because the students will set some questions. You can give some riders that what is not to be done, what is not allowed, what is allowed. So these things, once you can give that thing, then you can really exploit the student's mind. Whatever is there, that since the basic issue is that the students have to be given to learn by themselves. So you have to create some opportunity where the students ought to learn, ought to make themselves use their mind, make themselves use their minds and brains, so to give the due to or to do justice to their presence in the classroom or in that particular grade. So that is important. Use of visual aid and voice movement of the teacher to hold attention. So the TV, you know that the camera angle changes. So naturally, because the students are conditioned in that, so therefore that you have to, a teacher has to move and change positions also. And the varieties of lecturing is very, very important. It's not that if you go on delivering a lecture, then it will appear very boring. So you have to make it interesting by some means or other, and must have to have some conclusion of a lecture. The other important point is that you can empower the minds of the students by introducing the open source courseware. This means to create own repository, including joining global open education consortium. So this is also there. The global education consortium is there. So you can create your course and you can join there the open uh, uh, repository, courseware repository, and then that way you can really ultimately do that thing, and you can empower the minds through the introduction of open source courseware. Invoke the outcome based learning systems. I have already told you, making learning amenable to becoming creative. So whatever we do, we have to make the students creative, or the creative instinct of the student has to be extracted from. So that is the question of planning. And that plan is not universal. The plan is subjective, plan is subjective, plan is specific to a classroom, plan is specific, time specific. That is what is important, what is operative in today may not be operative tomorrow. So this particular realization has to be there in the teach within the teachers, and the creation of platform for sharing of experience of teachers. So this is another important thing, that if any institution can create a platform, say through internet, say, where the teachers will be exchanging their experiences, the classroom experiences in a particular institute, then that will ultimately give a lot of boost to the entire teaching activity. It has not been done so far, but it can be practiced. That's what I personally feel. So, what the teacher should do? The teacher, I mean, fix their own teaching patterns with a question is in mind, that in the current information age, why would a student like to learn from me? So this is important. And then the idea is that what I will try to tell you one thing, that what is the learning style of the teacher, what is the learning style of a student, and then the learning styles will be different. And also, another important point is, you may find that at some point of time that there are certain students who are global learners. Global learners, they really do not really like to learn incrementally. They don't learn incrementally. So they will, all of a sudden, they will come out with the grasping of the thing. So that's why in many of the engineering courses, one teacher may find that some of the students are not functioning very well. The common conclusion is that the student is not good. But the issue is that if the student is a global learner, it has to be really honored. And then that honor can be given only if we can understand the nature of the student. And so this is a very, very typical task. So uh, the entire thing, the generalization is a very, very difficult thing. It's a wrong thing, I would say, that the generalization is not there. That there are specific differences among the students, learning styles of the students, and also students must understand that this is the thing, that this kind of deliberations are to be made in one or two classes within the students, so that the students are apprised of the fact that what is their learning styles may not be matching with the teaching styles. So in today's the present age, I believe that the students are quite matured, they are quite intelligent, they are quite uh, understandable, in the sense that they will also understand that their learning styles, if we can really make it clear that their learning styles ought to be different from the teaching styles of the different teachers, then naturally they will also like to adjust their learning traits with the teaching traits, and accordingly they can intermingle their opinions, and the attitudes can be made intermingle so as to have the common objective achieved, that is the learning becomes a successful activity. Because we are trying, the teachers are trying, the students are coming to the class, and then nothing is actually happening. Whatever is happening within the students, that's happening within the students by their own. So naturally, the entire thing is a wasteful exercise. So therefore, to make it meaningful, so many things are there. So many things are being made. So therefore, my personal feeling is that one has to adjust oneself every year, every time. And so therefore, you can really give the students some activities which you may not know it also. If the students can come out with some idea which I do not know, I will appreciate, because the students must teach us. So therefore, that is most important thing. And so I would say that the most important part is that in today's scenario, it is important that we ultimately imbibe the culture of the new generation skills, like the computational skills, the digital technologies are all pervading in our lives. So naturally, that is also there in the different branches of science and engineering. So that is also to be. I mean, the teacher has to be quite proficient in that. The teacher has to mend themselves. Teacher has to modify themselves in order that they can cope with the students, and then the several kinds of design activities can be given. So this is another important point, that the design activities, as I said, that the most of the mismatches, because the mismatches are inevitable. So therefore, what is our idea? Our approach should be to create a balance. Now, the create a balance means that how should we really pick up a group of students or one student? So, I mean, I will not say that to be so specific that each and every student, yes, accepted that each and every student will be different a little bit. But the question of standardization, theory of standardization, statistically, there will be some commonness. Now, that is the theory of statistics. So you have to map. You have to map the entirety of the learning styles of the students. So this is one very important thing. For that, you have to interact with the students. So the interaction is very important. If the teachers enter into the students' own problems, be it academic, be it even personal problems, then the students at some point of time will feel that the teacher is for his or her good. So naturally, they will ultimately be responsive to the teacher for any kind of activities. So, and there is no point. It is not like what it used to be some 50 years back. It is something which has become which has been changed so much so that we have to evolve new way of pedagogy. So this is the classical pedagogy may not be useful for us. So this is another point that the non-traditional teaching learning strategies you have to use, and these are the important points which come to my mind. Another important thing which I would say that the Bloom's taxonomy, that outcome-based education is the one which is now the most uh, um common thing uh, which is uh, rather what should I say, that which is expected from all the institutions right at this moment. So that is why uh, the outcome based education has to be practiced, and then it is important for all of us to understand that how can we really sensitize the learning process. This is the job of a teacher. That's what I can tell you right at this moment. But except whatever doesn't really matter. The what matters is that how you conceive the problem, how you think the problem. The problem is yours, problem is mine, and the solution has to be evolved by me or by you at the time you are with a group of students. So that is the most important thing. That's what I have learned over a period of time. So thank you very much for sparing me to exchange my views with you.
Participant may write their query in the chat box. Sir, we have a one or two queries. Sir, the query is that how to address the student misconception or misunderstanding.
How to address the students
Misconceptions or misunderstandings
about the subject
about the subject.
about the subject. So here I would suggest that you basically try to understand that why the misconception is there. So you try to ask him that defending his misconception. So when you enter into a debate with the students with some sound scientific logic, then the student will ultimately realize that what is right, what is wrong. So this is, I would prefer such kind of thing. That whenever we write at this moment, the senior students, like a PhD students, unless you debate with him or her, then you cannot really make him clear if you are right. You may be wrong. I mean, we have to be very clear that not that all the time we are right. So another thing that whenever he or she has misconceptions, a lot of times it happens. You are absolutely right. That whenever that is there, then you have to see that where from did you get this thing? Why do you have this kind of conception? I feel that this should be this. Don't try to give totally impose knowledge on him. Then he will think that you are not really understanding him or her. So therefore you make it inductive. So gradually you interact with him, and him or her, ask them to speak out in favor of their own logic. And once you uh, debate it, reason it out with your scientific analysis, then at some point of time, if they are right, then automatically it will be your learning or my learning, and if I am right, then it will be their learning. So this is what I would say. That this is how you can simply get rid of the from this concept.
So there is another question that what intricate technologies should be used for the effective teaching method.
What?
What are the technologies should be integrated for effective teaching?
Yeah. Mainly what I would say that ICT technologies have to be used aplenty. And another important thing is that whatever way the teaching practice is equipped or is designed, it must have a reflection on the students' involvement in such kind of ICT activities. So unless that is there, then the students will neither take interest or not the learning will be very complete. Now the scientific theory sometimes is very important for us. That sometimes the scientific theories are to be explained and all those things. But while we explain those things, and unless we create a background, we can ask them to give the information, the digital information, and then we can ask them to come out with some kind of thing. Then probably these kind of strategies can be applied. So you cannot really have a unique strategy or unique technology. People say, but I personally feel people say that this kind of technologies, the education technologies, has to be implemented. But the issue is that the technology itself is getting obsolete. The half lives of any technology is so very small, so lessened that this cannot be a generic statement. The statement is that right at that particular moment, you apply your intuition that what kind of tools you have to use. Sometimes you can make it visual, you can make it active, sometimes you cannot. You have to make it reflective. So when the reflective is a issue, that means you are asking the students, you know very well that the students has to understand to learn these things of his own, because understanding, you cannot invent understandability in a student. He or she has to understand. So therefore you push him or her to that situation where or she should make use of the ICT tools to understand the things. So this is what I personally feel. But the question is very important and it's a challenge. What is more important is that it's a challenge. And also, I will say that it is not a generic issue. It cannot be generalized. It is a subjective issue. So only based on a particular scenario, based on a particular topic of discussion, the decision has to be taken. The judicious decision has to be taken.
Any other question from any participant? No, sir. Thank you, sir, for your insightful views about the pedagogy of soft skill or teaching methods. So hope we will. एक दिन का time है. All the participants are requested to log in the Canvas platform, as quiz has already uploaded over there, and give the quiz in order to get the certificate after the completion of the program.